PSN's Motoring 96 is brought to you by Quaker State. Exceeds the highest standards for engine protection. And Midas, the way it should be.
Good day, sir. Stop for an unsafe lane change as well as not signaling.
I think I was signaling, officer.
I'm afraid you weren't, sir. I have it on videotape. If you would come with me back to my cruiser, I'll be glad to show it to you.
But I thought photo radar was outlawed now in Ontario.
Photo radar is, sir, but we do have cameras in our Ontario Provincial Police cruisers now.
Welcome to Motoring 96.
Okay, we have a program, we call it a traffic management program, which replaced photo radar. We've been, by the press, called the Rangers, and that name is stuck, so now we're officially known as the Highway Rangers. The cars are all equipped with moving radar. We also have a laser unit, which is the most up-to-date unit that there is for speed measurement. It works on the principle of light. Also, we have the in-car video, which runs all the time the car is being used. It has both audio and video capabilities, so everything they say or everything the person says to them they have stopped is recorded. People want something done about these people on the road, these people that are hogging the passing lane, the people that are making these illegal turns, the people that are just not paying attention. They drive eating food, they drive trying to play computers, they drive doing all these different things, and it's just not an appropriate place to be behaving that way. And you see it all the time out there. And so if we get these things on film, we can pull the people over and talk to them. And particularly when they see their driving habits, or they're weaving in the lane when they're doing this or whatever, and they say, I didn't realize it was that bad. I didn't realize I was doing that. So we can show them on film exactly what they're doing.
Well, the camera's rolling anytime my police cruiser's in mobile state. Once I'm on duty, the camera's fully inactive, and it's rolling at all times. And basically the monitor's used simply for playback purposes. So when I stop someone for whatever infraction they've committed, I bring them back to the cruiser and just simply show them on the monitor exactly what they've done wrong. So instead of the charge, they just simply get a warning and visually observe themselves committing this crime.
Are you safer out there with this camera?
I think I am. For one, and also, as I said, it gives me the idea of security when stopped with somebody. Should something happen, there's always the videotape to go back on to see either A, where I went wrong, or who this person is. If they happen to do something to me and get away, who this person is, the identity might be captured on videotape, and we could always enhance the image later on.
See that guy at the gas station?
No.
Pull over.
What's going on?
He's got no plates, trip permit in the back window. He's getting gas. There's two of them in the car. That's him, be pulling out right there. He doesn't want to pull out now.
As a civilian, I would think it'd be a very scary feeling getting out of a car and approaching a car with a stranger in it. Do you feel safer out there now with this camera?
I do, in a strange way. I try and approach a car with caution, with or without the camera. I just feel that with the camera, should anything drastic happen, at least it would be caught on film.
Something's peculiar.
If a motorist is doing unsafe lane changing, you pull them over and they're going to give them a ticket and they deny it, will you let them know it's on videotape?
Yes, I would. And as far as each ticket goes now, I'm putting a V at the bottom of the ticket if there's videotape evidence. Most of the videotape evidence won't be used for Highway Traffic Act offenses, but if the person would like to see it, I would show it to them in the car.
Morning. Got a driver's license, ownership, and insurance?
What's the best advice you can give a motorist when they're pulled over and you're about to approach the car?
I would suggest that, number one, they stay in the vehicle. That's for our own safety and for theirs. I don't like when someone gets out of their car because I don't know why they're getting out. A lot of people get out because they don't have their seatbelt on. If I know you don't have your seatbelt on, don't get out of your car. Okay, that's one thing. I'd rather have them stay in the car. I like it when I can see their hands on approaching. So if they have their hands up or, on the door frame, somewhere that I can see them, and to maybe have their documents handy or tell me that they're going to reach for their documents when they're reaching for an ownership and insurance. That way I know what they're doing, they know what I want, and there's no confusion. I always approach every car with caution, and I guess I think, is this the last car I'm going to approach?
So far we're using the tape for criminal matters. Example would be an impaired driver. It's an excellent tool for an impaired driver, particularly when you can show the driver once he's sober, and his counsel and the judge exactly what happened when he wasn't so sober. It can really shorten up the court case a lot, because it's obvious that what he's doing is impaired driving.
So it's a good deterrent too.
It's a great deterrent, and it does cut down on court time, because there's no question, no argument. I mean, it's very hard to describe sometimes. When you're out there, you watch something take place, like a careless driving or an impaired driver, and you've got to get up and give a verbal statement and create a verbal picture in the judge's mind as to what happened. A film of that really assists in showing the judge exactly what happened.
You got your photo radar, now you got your in-car video. Is Big Brother really watching us? What do I think of all this? That's coming up later on Kenzie's Corner.
Okay, so here's a skill testing question for you. What was ugly, uncomfortable, and most certainly underpowered when it came to market? If you said the Escort, give yourself a pat on the back. This week on Test Drive, we put the 1997 edition through its paces. Power for the new Escort comes from an engine Ford have christened the split-port induction 2000. In English, this means the motor now displaces 2 litres and uses a variable intake induction strategy. Below 3,000 RPM, the air is drawn into the engine via long runners. Above that speed, a secondary set of runners open to satisfy the need for more air. The system has increased horsepower to 110 at 5,000 RPM, while torque increases to 125 pounds-feet and peaks at a user-friendly 3,750 RPM. The bonus here is that the increased power comes with better fuel economy. Elsewhere, the engine has been refined inside in an effort to cut down on some of the noise, vibration and harshness that was more than evident on the old unit. Another area of major improvement is the suspension. Up front are the familiar McPherson struts, while the rear gets a new and infinitely better quadrillink design with coil springs. Both ends benefit from sway bars. This new design does a couple of important things. First, the stronger design and right choice of bushings allows the rear wheels to toe in when pushed into a corner, technically something called compliant steer. And second, again due to the stronger suspension and stiffer chassis, the spring rates have been softened. That's the technical stuff out of the way. Does it work in practice? You better believe it. Not only does the car now have the power it cries out for, but the suspension makes the car quite capable as well as being rather comfortable. The only fly in the ointment, the Uniroyal tyres are as noisy as they've ever been. On the skid pad, the refinements came to the fore. The revised front-end geometry, better steering gear and stiffer mountings combined with the compliant steer allowed the Escort to pass with flying colours. The brakes have also been upgraded to match the rest of the underpinnings. While the disc drum format has been retained, the rear drums have been increased to 9-inch units for improved efficiency, and the master cylinder and booster are now matched to eliminate any play between the pushrod and pedal. During the brake test, the revised system hauled the Escort to rest in just under 117 feet from 80k, and it did so with a vastly superior pedal feel. The rework of the interior of the Escort has been done nicely. Dual airbags, the concept for the radio and heater controls come right from Taurus, which is a good thing. Large volume knob, large easy to use preset buttons, rotary controls. The gearbox, well, it quite simply ranks as one of the best in any North American car. In fact, it rivals those offered by the Japanese. However, there is a major criticism. If you happen to sit tall in the saddle, you cannot see anything between 80 and 120, nor can you see the fuel gauge. The reason? There's no tilt steering. Now, I realize this is an inexpensive car, but tilt steering is something I'd look for. Elsewhere, the improvements are not evident to the eye, but do nonetheless make a big difference. First, the entire side of the car is made in a single piece. This both improves the strength of the car and the fitments of the door. Second, better seals, improved airflow around the car, and a redesigned aerial all serve to reduce the amount of wind noise. And third, revised water management directs rainwater over the roof rather than around onto the side glass. Small stuff, but stuff that makes a big difference. Of the many options on the Escort, they have two remote control devices. One locks and unlocks all four doors. This one, on the other hand, only does the driver's door. You may say, well, what the heck's that good for? The answer is simple. It is handy here, but more importantly, it allows you to unlock the trunk when you're bringing your groceries over. On the subject of the trunk, it's cut to bumper level, is nicely squared off, will hold an average family's luggage, and offers split folding rear seats. On the safety front, the Escort comes with dual airbags, adjustable upper seat belt anchors, and thankfully anti-lock brakes are an available option on all models. From the highway to the mall, the Escort does it all rather nicely. Anybody in the market for a compact car could do a lot worse than the 97 edition of the Escort. The bonus? This car runs on barely more than the smell of an oily rag. It's time to update our long-term Taurus. Now, we've had a lot of fun over the weeks. However, we've noticed something rather peculiar. Push the Taurus into a corner with any degree of enthusiasm and the steering goes numb, almost as though the pump runs out of capacity. Now, to make sure that this wasn't a fault with just our particular vehicle, we took a trip down to the local rental agency, drove 4 of them around the block, and you know what? Same problem. I think it's something that Ford are going to have to rectify, and rectify fairly soon, before the complaints start pouring in.
At first glance on the highway, this would look like just another Ford Crown Victoria, when in reality, it's an OPP cruiser. Now, the tip-off used to be, at least for yours truly, the tip-off used to be the big red lamps in the rear window. Well, to show you what good sports they are at the Ontario Provincial Police Department, they're going to give you a little tip. Don't look for the red lights anymore because they're being covered with baseball caps. So, no more excuses. All right, now let's head to the garage and join a man who never breaks the speed limit. At least that's what he tells me. Here's Bill Gardner.
Well, of course not, Brad. I wouldn't think of it. But I'll tell you, I got pretty excited the other day when I heard our transportation minister was considering raising the speed limit on the highways to 120K. You got my vote, buddy. Any case, I want to talk about brakes this week, just in case you were going a little bit over 100K, Brad, and you need to slow down. What I want to look at is disc brake calipers, and on the left front corner of this minivan you can get a real good look at the disc brake caliper. Now, the brake caliper's job in life is to convert that hydraulic pressure that you've manufactured in the brake system when you slam on that brake pedal into mechanical action down at the wheel. The brake caliper right here squeezes the brake pads tight together around the disc brake rotor in order to stop the vehicle. Okay, now I'm going to take you over to the bench and show you some examples of just what can go wrong with a disc brake caliper and how and why you'd go about rebuilding it. Okay, I've got a set of calipers on the bench here that I'm working on rebuilding. These are off a larger vehicle. They happen to be off a 1-ton truck. And there's a pretty good example of just what can go wrong with these things. Now, here's the old dust boots that came out of the calipers that we had a problem with. You can see that they're dirty and a little bit reddish brown, and that reddish brown is rust. What's happened is rust has pushed this dust boot out of its groove and allowed water to go in the caliper. And on one of the other dust boots, there's a tiny little hole pierced in the boot, and that allowed water to go inside the caliper and seize it. Now, here's an example of one of the old calipers, and these grooves that you see, this outer groove here retains the dust boot, and the inner groove right in there, the larger one, retains a fluid seal that actually seals the hydraulic pressure inside this caliper. And all that rust that you see out there really shouldn't be there at all. That should be squeaky clean in that groove. With all that rust in there, water can easily bypass the boot. Now, here's what happens if any water sneaks past that dust boot. Water and dirt can get in the caliper area, seize up the piston completely. Now, the piston should look shiny and clean, just as it does in this particular area here. But down here, you can see it's all covered in rust in this area, and over here, the plating, the chrome plating on this piston, is completely blistered, and that's going to expand the piston a little bit in that area and cause it to jam in the bore. And any rust or dirt that gets in the caliper bore can also cause it to seize up. This piston is a very tight fit in the bore, and any little bit of damage like that is going to cause it to seize up. Now when it's ready to go back together, the piston is just slipped into the boot in this fashion here. You've got to be careful as you tuck it in, place it in the back of the boot, and then carefully run the boot up and out, excuse me, up and around the piston so that you don't cut it, and you don't use any clamping devices or tools. You just use your fingers and a lubricant on that dust boot, and the piston will easily go back into the caliper. If it doesn't go back in with your hands, you've done something wrong and you're going to cut that boot. Now I wish I could give you a hard, fast rule on when these calipers have to be rebuilt, but I can't. The key thing is that they have to be inspected every time the brakes are serviced or replaced. Whenever the brake pads are changed, you've got to look at the caliper carefully to determine if it's in good enough condition to perform for the entire life of that next set of pads you're putting in. And GM cars are a perfect example of how varied things can get. Their front brake calipers are really great. You can go 2, 3, 4 brake jobs sometimes before you have to rebuild their front calipers. But their rear brake calipers are lousy. You're real lucky if you get the first set of brake pads before they seize up. So the key thing is inspection. Usually what we do when we're doing a brake job is pull the boot back and have a look inside and see if that caliper piston is squeaky clean. If it looks real good inside, it probably is. Another thing that helps is if you get the brake fluid flushed and changed every once in a while, that'll prevent moisture from entering the system and corroding the caliper bore in there. If you're in any doubt, you might want to just get that brake fluid changed when you're getting the brake job done. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 96.
A few weeks back, we test drove the new Hyundai Elantra. Graham Fletcher noted how much progress Hyundai has made since the introduction of the Pony. Well, it appears that another Korean manufacturer is poised to expand into the North American market. Kia Motors landed on the shores of the United States in 1994, and this year plan to open 40 additional dealerships, bringing the total to 140.
Well, we're just finishing our rollout across the southern United States. We've finished with the western U.S., and we're now going to be proceeding up the east coast of the U.S. We should finish that development by the end of 1997, and we think we'll be ready for Canada for 1998. We try to separate ourselves from the other Korean company that's been selling in North America. That quality story is critical. The customer satisfaction story is critical. I think our sport utility vehicle really helps say Kia's different. Kia has new ideas, new kinds of products. No one else has a car like the Sportage. You know, it's an SUV that holds 5 big adults comfortably, has storage space in the back, gets great fuel economy. Who could ask for more than that?
If you'd like to ask for more, Kia has a prototype version of the KMS2 Roadster, derived from the now departed Lotus Elan.
Kia purchased the tooling and design rights for the Lotus Elan. We've restyled the car inside and out. We've installed a Kia-designed engine, and it will be introduced in the Korean market in June of 1996. We're evaluating the KMS2 to see if we should launch it in the U.S.
With baby boomers now hitting the age of 50, car manufacturers are keeping a close eye on their buying habits. For instance, in 1981, Chevrolet was the nameplate driven by the largest group of boomers. Today, Chevrolet has dropped to second spot behind Ford. But in a recent survey, General Motors and Ford didn't even make the wish list for a purchase. Toyota dominated the list, followed by Honda. Plymouth was the only domestic nameplate to make the top 20.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns the third brake light. One of the final things I do after completing a brake job is to go to the back of the vehicle and make sure the brake lights work. It's no good to have good brakes on a car if the driver behind you doesn't know you're applying them. Now, the regular running lights at the back of the car look like that, and when you step on the brakes, there's what you get. This is why we call these number 1 and number 2 brake lights. But all cars built in the last 10 model years have what we refer to as the third brake light, mounted higher and independent of those other 2 brakes. When you apply the brakes, this light should illuminate with braking only. It's higher and separate from the others, so it really catches other drivers' attention. It's been very effective at reducing the amount of rear-end collisions. But of course it does nothing for you if the bulbs are burned out. That's the case in this car. Now if you want to check it easily and you don't have a friend to help you out to apply the brake pedal, just take your snow brush, cram it between the brake pedal and the front of the seat, just wedge it in there, go to the back of the car and check it. It's a simple deal to do all by yourself. That's your Midas tip of the week.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
We're here at the Toronto airport. I'm getting on an airplane to go see a British Touring Car Championship race. You're going to see that on a future show, and of course it's pouring rain, so this is going to be done in one take. You know, at the airport they've got all sorts of technology. You got radar and you got x-rays and stuff, and as we've seen earlier, the police are using technology now to try and catch the bad guys. Now regular viewers know that I was against photo radar, and the reason for that was it was going after a problem that doesn't exist. Somebody going 105 kilometers an hour on a freeway is not a driving problem. But the in-car video camera, I'm all for it. I never worried about photo radar being an infringement on civil rights. It wasn't an issue for me. Get the bad drivers, that to me is the issue. As we saw today, the policemen can use the in-car video to really catch the stupid drivers. They can use them for education purposes, and the major point is that drunks, once they see themselves after they're sober, they don't fight the issue in court. You know, about 10 years ago, I thought to myself, why doesn't somebody come up with an in-car video that can get the bad guys? And now they've done it. So I'm saying, good on them. I'm all for it. This is Jim Kenzie.
Earlier in the program, we showed you the brand new videotape camera that has hit the highways in the province of Ontario. Well, we've saved the best, or maybe that's the worst for last. And joining us once again is Constable Reefer. And Constable, what have we got here? I hate to ask this.
What we have here is a laser gun. What we conduct is a LiDAR, laser emitted detection and ranging. What we do is set up a program where I'm at an vantage point where I can observe traffic traveling away from me, and I have other officers further down the road to stop you. So I get a pinpoint accurate measure of your speed. I can then radio ahead, advise the officer of the car, what lane he's traveling, and his speed. They'll stop you, issue you a ticket there.
Now, I have no personal knowledge, but I've heard rumors about things called radar detectors. Would they detect this?
Not with the laser. It's a waste of money.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your help. And you know, after this week's program, I don't know if it's worth it. I think I'll just sell my car. That's it for now. We'll see you next week for more stories about cars and the people who drive them. Paul, how you doing?
Yeah, how you doing?
First of all, I want to ask you about the commercial, where it was shot, and a little bit about you getting involved in it. What it was like for you?
Well, it's supposed to be the Australian Outback, but it's in Bakersfield, California. So when we shot the commercial, I was in the Bahamas doing Flipper, the movie. So I couldn't fly back to Australia, so we come up and shot it in Bakersfield in California, pretended it was the Australian Outback. It's the same sort of country, you know.
It really is all about creating a small roadster and coupe. All the reactions around the world when we've shown the car have been extremely positive. So we just got to get on and make it and get it out there now.
TSN's Motoring 96 has been brought to you by Quaker State. Exceeds the highest standards for engine protection. And Midas, the way it should be.